Let's explore action-focused education for climate change. Coming up, a rich conversation around how climate education can shift our perspective and leverage the creativity and innovation of young people.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session entitled Urgency plus Optimism equals Action for Climate Education. The timing of this discussion could not be more appropriate as we continue to measure and witness the impact of climate change. Right now, there's new data showing weakness in the Doomsday Glacier, new data on biodiversity loss, and images of historic wildfires spreading across 3 states in the USA. The list could go on. And in many parts of the world, it's the start of a new school year. And whether schools are open or teaching remotely, right now, this is another school year in which almost no public education system in the world is teaching age-appropriate, holistic climate education across primary and secondary levels. So that means another year group across the world will leave school with little science-based knowledge or understanding of climate change and its full impact. I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Alison Bellwood, the creator and director of The World's Largest Lesson, a program that activates children for the SDGs through education. This year, we launch a campaign for climate education, providing teachers and students with resources and action for learning about climate. And we join the Earth Day Network and others in a campaign calling on governments to take bold action on climate and environmental literacy. Today, I'm hosting this panel discussion to explore the principle and opportunity of concerted action for climate and environmental education, and specifically to talk action to make this happen urgently. COP26 in November 2021 gives us just over 1 year from now to add more countries to the small list, including Mexico, Italy, and Finland, who have already made a commitment to educate their children for climate change. I'm joined in this discussion by representatives of the critical voices in this debate, young people themselves, the teaching and education community, and national decision makers. I'll introduce you to them now. Melati Wijsen is a co-founder of Bye Bye Plastic Bags in Indonesia. She's been leading this youth movement since 2013. She's a passionate protector of our oceans. She's one of Time magazine's most influential teens and has recently founded a new youth empowerment project, YOUTHTOPIA. Melanie Harwood is co-founder and CEO of eduCCate Global, a program with a new approach to climate education that is working at a practical level to ensure that there are accredited climate change teachers everywhere. And Marta Delgado Peralta, Undersecretary for Multilateral Affairs and Human Rights from the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is a recognized environmentalist leader at both national and international levels, with many leadership roles in environmentalism and human rights under her belt. She's currently the president of the first UN Habitat Assembly and Mexico's Sherpa for the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy. Importantly for this discussion too, last year, Mexico made climate education a commitment under its constitution. Welcome and thank you to you all. I'd just like to start by exploring the principle and opportunity of climate and environmental education. Some might say that it's such a long-term solution that we should really put our efforts into the more immediate responses to the climate crisis. Melati, why is climate education so urgently important? Is it really just a long-term solution?
Definitely not. And thanks, Alison, for bringing up this really important question, because I think this creates a sort of distraction where we only think about long-term, far away, far distant goals that we need to reach. But we need to look at how we can motivate and accelerate this current generation, the generation that I'm a part of, because we're already asking, how can we get involved? Where do we find the knowledge, the resources to go out into the front lines, to go out into our communities and create impact? But because our current education system, the traditional linear education system as it is right now, is not giving us this education, is not giving us this knowledge. So I think we have to focus on climate education and completely changing the curriculum in schools right now, but we also have to focus, look, there are other tangible things that we can be focusing on. So it's a parallel. They have to happen at the same time.
Melanie, do you have anything to add to that? Have we made any progress at all? Melanie, you might be on mute.
Yeah, I saw that I was muted there. Thank you, Alison. Melati, you are spot on. I think that we have made progress, but not enough. And when we launched the climate change teacher course last year on April the 22nd, nobody came. Nothing happened. And I wondered why. And I had to learn how to use Twitter. And I sent direct messages to teachers saying, please do this course. It then went viral. And we had 329,000 schools come on board in more than 40 countries. So we then realized that the appetite was there, but we learned so many valuable lessons along the way, Alison. For me, as we've now developed over the last year and a bit, as we've been building the entire project itself, we have to have a triangular pyramid system. The head teacher of the school, the leadership, has to nominate a sustainability and climate change lead teacher. We have to upskill. These have to be the creme de la creme of teachers. They have to be prepared. They then have to know to go to the world's largest lesson, what to look for, how to deliver the content, and they have to be confidently delivering the content. So there's a whole raft that we have to work together. We have to all join together as one team. We can no longer, we do not have the time or the luxury of thinking, well, they'll sort it. Each one of us here has got to join together. There's no bones about it.
And if we achieve this ambition, what difference do you think it will make to the issue that we face, the huge climate change issue?
Everything, absolutely everything, Alison. We've already noticed how we've been doing a trial in Derbyshire County Council. In one region, when we had one school that we now call a Gold Award school, every single teacher in that school is a sustainability and climate change lead teacher. Even the dinner ladies, the parent governors, the PTA, everybody has now done our course. And we're noticing massive changes in the entire community. Shops are changing what they stock. They're not allowing plastic bags. We've had parents come to us and say, I used to be a climate denier and now I'm ashamed of my stance before, and now I am, I'm climate literate. My children are teaching me. Little children as young as 4 are making their parents write out 100 times, the coral is dying. And it's now sinking in. Teachers do not just teach children. They indirectly teach an entire community, an entire society. So that is why we have to have the lesson plans that are all there ready for those teachers, but we've got to skill in every school. We have got to upskill the sustainability and climate change specialist lead teachers. It's the only way. It's the only way.
Thank you. And Martha, can you share something of the rationale in Mexico that led to your national commitment, which is such a historic one from our community's point of view? How does this decision fit into your overall climate commitments, and what kind of difference do you think it's going to make?
Thank you, Alison. Well, I think that this decision was not the first step to take, because we have an history behind the decision of making environmental education obligatory in the Constitution, or mandatory in the Constitution, which is the tradition of the country of developing environmental education programs in schools at the basic level. As you may know, the curricula can be intervened in several and different knowledges or themes regarding the protection of the environment. It's not really recommendable just to introduce one a signature for environmental education, but to embed all the scholar curricula with environmental knowledges. So in Mexico, we took that step in order for all the country to be accessible for environmental education, and also to organize the training of the teachers at the national level, indeed. But I have to say that I don't know how to take these as an advancement or not. I was learning environmental education when I was a young professional. I started 30 years ago. And now that you asked us if this is going to be a very important change for the country, I start thinking, how we are spending 30 years from our lives thinking that environmental education is important, and which changes were the really achievements of those years. We really need to speed up this change of mind, and this change of mind is coming with a good education at schools at all levels. Melanie says the children are teaching us, and that is very, very important to understand. They are right now more in contact with the reality of the problems that are caused by environmental damages. So right now we need to speed up this conscience among the society in order not just to be educated, but also to change our values, system, and our behavior in order to really change the world in itself.
Yes, and you know, and as Melanie says, if we embed that in our youngest citizens, then the influence that they can have on their parents, their families, and their wider communities can be tremendous. And of course, they also can, you know, as they make choices to follow certain careers as they grow up and to continue their education, they will grow up into economies that they can shape and start to become green and environmentally sustainable, plus add their voice to the agenda that we all are working on right now, you know, looking at how we can influence decisions at a high level. So thank you for all your contributions. I think if you visit a classroom now, on an average school day, anywhere in the world, I would expect, the subjects and the teaching approach that you would see is pretty much the same as it has been for 50 years or even 100 years. Children's facing the front, and the subjects that are listed and on the timetable are very consistent. There are so many calls right now to address a crisis in education and to try and reimagine education post-COVID-19. And climate and environmental education can clearly be part of that agenda, but it's only one element of it. And I'd like to really kind of dig into that a little more and explore some of the actions that could be taken to make that happen. Melanie, you've already mentioned some of them. We don't really get to hear from teachers or educators very often in these kind of discussions. And as a practitioner, what does climate education, what should it look like at a local level? How do you actually change this super tanker of a system of education to allow this in?
So easily, Alison. It's like Martha said. Martha said you weave it as if it's a golden thread right throughout your curriculum. But then, as Martha was saying, you know, we need our entire education system. We have to prepare children. So we have to ensure that they are competent in literacy, because we know that if you can write well and you can read well, you are a deeper cognitive thinker. You can access all of the curriculum. And we know that our schools are working on that with all the hours that are sent to them. But it's about preparing those teachers. We found one of the most profound responses when we delivered the climate change teacher course to so many schools around the world, that they kept coming back and saying, okay, we've done your course. How do we teach climate change? And we were like, okay, so we haven't got it right then. We had to come back to the drawing board, speak to teachers, speak to head teachers and say, what is the method? What do we do? And we were incredibly blessed. One of our most talented head teachers, a lady called Fiona Cowan, she's a head teacher in Derbyshire in the United Kingdom. She said, let's build an inset training. And we did that. And we trialed it with a cluster of schools, then 500 schools in Derbyshire. And then we gave it out to all of our eduCCate Global Award schools. And then the penny dropped, because we were saying there's a process involved. You have to map your entire curriculum. We showed them, here's your big whiteboard, come into the staff room and add in at least 50 hours of climate literacy onto your curriculum throughout the year. Go and find those lessons. They are there, they're out there. You don't have to spend a lot of time creating them. It is having the confidence and that basic knowledge and that understanding of how to deliver it. And if those questions, and when those questions come in, how to respond to them. You have to have a ground knowledge. My personal background, I was a handwriting specialist, and I created a handwriting scheme. And there was no point in giving a lesson plan to somebody without upskilling them and turning them into a handwriting specialist. So that is where I'm coming from. I'm saying, well, we've done it before with our handwriting scheme. We need to upskill the teachers so that they're confident, then give them the content, and then guide them through the remapping of that curriculum. It is so easily doable.
Is anyone getting it right yet? Is there any country you can look to?
Lots. We have a school in Dubai. We have two. We had the first one was the kindergarten starters, the very first, the head teacher that completely changed my world. I was totally wrong. I thought we only needed one climate change teacher in every school, and I got beaten down very quickly. Asha Alexander was the head teacher of GEMS, kindergarten starters, and she said, no, every single teacher in the school has to be a sustainability and climate change lead. And then she went 10 steps further. Every parent governor, every parent, every assistant. And I said, Asha, there's now 500 of you. And she said, that is the only way. And the other
sorry to just cut you off there.
No.
Melati, I was just wondering, is it all about schools? How can we sort of educate and empower young people? Is it solely about the formal system? What's the role for informal learning here, for climate and the environment that could come from young people themselves? Is it, is there an answer there as well?
Yeah, I think for starters, everything that I'm just hearing right now, I'm so excited for teachers to just get all of this knowledge and then just push it out there, because I do think that we're spending 7 hours a day at school from all the way up to 12th grade, and I do think that there's a lot of potential in that space. But to your question, Alison, what's interesting, especially what we're seeing happen right now, we're doing a lot of online learning, and on the side, while we have our Zoom classes open, a lot of my friends that are still in school, my sister's grade, on the other side, on another tab, they're researching on their own about topics like climate change, about topics like plastic pollution, and it's simply because they have this extra time where they're thinking about bigger questions on their own. And that's really through my own experience as a young change maker, starting at 12 years old with absolutely no business plan, no strategy, no guidance from a textbook at school, but just from the passion and the just confidence. Again, like you said, this confidence of going out there with your passion and getting started. I connected with over 150,000 students all over the world with so many different backgrounds. And every time I shared the story of how we got started, what we learned, what were the lessons, kids around us, our age, would sit a little taller, lean a little closer, and say, wait a second, you're the same age? If you can do it, I can do it too. So this is where there's something special about peer-to-peer education. So with our new project, YOUTHTOPIA, this is what we focus on. We work together with real life frontline young change makers, put together the knowledge that they are going through, the experience they're going through, into digestible and fun content for the rising young change maker. And I think that that's something that young people nowadays are really looking for and waiting for, and the current traditional system of education is just not giving it fast enough.
So I think it's interesting, isn't it? There's the organized and structured system of bringing teachers on board and training them with current materials. And then there's providing that inspiration to children along the way from people like yourself, Melati, and others like you around the world who can encourage these young children to see that the changes you've made, both in your own life and the influence that you've had, is something that they can have too. But in Mexico, Marta, you have made a constitutional commitment, and you've already referenced that, you know, it's not a new thing for Mexico, but what process are you going through to make this real in Mexico? How will you know when it's worked?
I think that is going to be the hardest challenge, because the educational process is not for the short term. No. So to monitor it, how the inhabitants or the population, they change the consciousness or their behavior, it comes with time, and year by year, monitoring how we are improving our practice in the real life. And it is important to mention that environmental education is an extraordinary and indispensable tool for to change, of course, the habits that we need to fight against climate change. But the people, kids, young people, or adults as me, we need also to feel that the public policies are compatible with our new behaviors. It is very frustrating when you are trying to change your behavior, when you are adopting new practices, and really the public policies or the streets or the laws or the regulations are not accompanying those new behaviors that we want for the society to be introduced. So environmental education is going to be monitored, and also we are launching a new training program for the teachers and activities in the schools. But in the other hand, public policies and regulations and laws at the local level in cities, for example, are instrumental in order for everyone to implement this new formation, these new values that we are to develop and to put in place.
Absolutely, and it's great that you mentioned that, because you know it is a holistic picture, isn't it? And the the Paris Agreement and all of the treaties that have come before it don't just ask for one thing. They ask for many different aspects of a country's organizational structure to change in order to address this problem. And imagine how disappointing it is for a child to go through a process to change something in their life and then to feel despair when they look out, that nobody seems to agree with them. So there's something here about an intergenerational conversation that needs to take place on a regular basis to make sure that children are encouraged, and that children can help perhaps people who are older than them to understand their feelings, and to respond to that. Is that happening in Mexico?
Well, I think that is starting to happen. And we are 127 million inhabitants country. We have 32 different entities or states. And it is also important to understand that this process is going to take maybe a couple or 3 years in order to be established in the country. But as a result of the mandate of the constitutional introduction of environmental education, and also due to the approval of our climate change law in the country, the Mexican government is really getting this project as a federal one, and we have a federal instruction program. The education in Mexico is decentralized to states, And then the next steps are going to be the involvement of all the state level authorities, educational authorities in this mandate.
Amazing, amazing. And in that way, one of the things it obviously can be is truly inclusive. Because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of what we see currently is that there are certain countries or certain socio-demographic groups that get this kind of education and others that don't. Melanie, is there anything we can do about that?
It's a tough one, Alison. We've been approached, I'm not allowed to mention any names. We've been approached by it's a Middle Eastern government, and they want to roll out to 35,000 schools like yesterday. And then we've been approached by an entire state in America, and they want every single school. And we're busy working on a project where we've put together 2,000 UK schools to partner them with 2,000 LDC schools. And that's where we see the disparity. So it's like when you and I had that conversation when we first met a few months back. We could have a school in Uganda that doesn't have tables and chairs and doesn't have, there's one computer, there's no data. To be able to have a Zoom with them, you have to get up at 2 in the morning, and even then it's patchy and it's on their phone. So we have these huge disparities of how we're going to get this training out there. And I think it's boots on the ground for me. From what I'm thinking of is, no disrespect to Marta. I mean, I was so blessed. I met Inigo Orvaneos from eduCCate, and he was on the stand with me at COP25. I mean, you know, what a guy. He was telling me so passionately about what's happening in Mexico. And I was like, you've got to come on the stand and tell the world with me. And we're on WhatsApp going, what you doing now? And I think that we need boots on the ground. We need, what we're looking at doing is having mentors, and we start onboarding, we want to onboard 10,000 schools initially within 2.5 days. And then we want to ramp that up and double that every week. So we want 10,000 schools the first week, 20,000, 40,000, 80,000. I think that we need to get to 100 million teachers within 12 months. I know people are going to look at me and go,
amazing,
amazing,
amazing if you can do that. And I think you need the help of Melati,
absolutely,
and all of the experience and skills that they have in using social media tools in a new and different way to reach people. Let's move on a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about the Paris Agreement, but Article 12 covers action for climate empowerment. It includes the commitment, amongst other things, to climate change education as part of the process of delivering the whole treaty. We're obviously planning now for COP26, which will be in November of next year, we hope. So by the time that happens, it will be 6 years since the Paris Treaty. Martha, what are you hoping for at COP26? Where does climate education fit into the whole picture? You've mentioned that a little bit already for Mexico. And how can Mexico help the rest of the world?
Well, first of all, I think that we are going to have a conference of the party with less emissions because we maybe are going to attend this conference online, and it's important to take advantage of these new resources. We have strongly supported the efforts under the UNFCCC during all these years. And we also advanced the action for climate empowerment agenda. It has 6 pillars, which are climate change, education, training, public awareness, public access to information, which is very important, public participation, and international cooperation. So we look forward to exchanging experiences with our colleagues during the 8th dialogue on ACE, And it will be also a great opportunity to exchange best practices with other countries that we can replicate in order to increase our society's resilience and their involvement on climate action. I need to mention also that we are supporting the feminist foreign policy of Mexico also in the climate side. So we encouraged in the COP25 the introduction of a gender climate plan for all the world. And I think that in this conference of the party, we are going to monitor how it was implemented during the 2020 year. And furthermore, as you might be aware, 2020 marks the end of the Doha Work Program on ACE. So while we are able to have our intersessional meetings for the COP26 this year, we must continue right now to participate actively in the negotiations, and maybe we can also increase ambition in our own program. For this year, Mexico have not increased ambitions, but maybe for the next one, we are able to do so.
I hope so. And I really hope that your conversations leading up to the events will help to influence the countries within your region and globally to follow your lead, because it is not enough. Melati, you have a very busy time. Obviously, some of your work focuses on COP, but what does the next 6 months hold, next 12 months hold for you? Where will you be focusing your efforts and attention, and what are you sort of hoping to achieve?
Well, I think for me, generally, where my passion and sort of gap year plus at the moment is really focusing on building out YOUTHTOPIA to become the headquarters for young change makers, because I really believe that the timing is right now. We don't have the luxury to hit the snooze button to say we'll do it tomorrow. We've got to focus on doing that now. But I think my hope as well is that young people and having us go out there and start building out this content on a peer-to-peer level inspires teachers to accelerate, inspire government to accelerate, and also increase ambition. I want to echo that because I think the bar is not set high enough. What I hope this year at COP26, what we see happening is more short-term plans and goals. What are the tangible changes we're going to be seeing in the next 12 months, and how can we communicate that on a large scale to the public, to the indigenous communities, to the young people? How can we be involved in those shorter term goals? Because I think when especially me at 19, if I see something like it's going to happen in 2030, it's going to happen in 2025, I'm like, that's too far away. We have to look at the next 12 months. We have to look at how are we going to change the way we're learning. And I think also COVID-19 has accelerated a lot of those questions and those discussions. It's an unprecedented opportunity that we have here, full of confrontation, but we have to take the next step. We have to seriously start changing and not talk about the new normal, but the better normal. So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on for the next 12 months, starting yesterday. And I'm really hoping that we can inspire and accelerate.
And how will you enable young people to have a voice and be heard in these discussions? It's to not be a tokenistic moment, but where your thoughts and opinions are really valued. Do you feel that's happening, and can you see that space opening up?
Yes, so when I started, I think I had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, and we entered so many different stages on so many different levels at such an early age. But what I've really seen happen over the last several years intensely is this real willingness to hear from the younger generation. And sometimes we don't understand the bigger picture here because we're too thinking in the short term, pointing fingers and blaming. And where young people have is the role to accept these invitations and show the way, lead by example. We sometimes have such a simple way of thinking that when we talk to politicians, when we talk to government, or when we talk to business leaders, you know, they go through a whole standard operational procedure and we're like, it's not that complicated, you know. And sometimes it's that elephant in the room that we just have to start getting to dance, because, you know, why, for example, why did it take 6 years for young people on the front lines and a lot of collaboration to ban one single-use plastic item, plastic bags, here on the island of Bali? Why is it taking so much longer for countries like Indonesia, where more than half of our population is below the age of 30, to get climate education implemented, to change the curriculum? I think this is really the way that we want to work, is just by young people leading by example and coming from a place of authenticity, of passion, and just knowing where and what we want to see in our leadership.
I love your point. It's just not that hard. I love it. Melanie, sort of your work for the next year is obviously set in terms of this huge ambition. You know, what's it? 100 million teachers. Amazing.
Yes, I want to. That's what I watched. I watched David Attenborough's Extinction program on BBC on Wednesday, and I was and I was screaming and howling and crying and raging. And then I got up and I said to my husband, "That's it, enough! 100 million teachers." And he was like, "Yes, dear, here we go."
But I would like to ask you, I would also like to ask, sort of, those teachers will be teaching in the classroom, which is amazing, but how can we bring those voices of teachers together to talk about the desire to see this happening globally and use teachers as a really a positive force? Students have had, you know, through the climate strikes, there's been a huge focus on students in the last 18 months, but teachers are part of this process too. How can we bring their voices into this?
It's empowerment, and it's only when you know what you need to know. So it's like Melati said, I remember starting this entire journey that I've been on recently, about 2.5, 3 years ago, and I went to a company saying, I want to make this documentary, and she said, "Climate change, it's the elephant in the room." Oh, Melati, I should have said to her, "Get the elephant to dance." You know, honestly, I've written that down. That's it. It's a book. You know, get the elephant to dance. Where we are going to be heading is, we're very lucky. We're working with directors of education in councils in London and around the UK. One of them is Hammersmith and Fulham Borough Council. The leader there, Stephen Cowan, has connected us with the most incredible lady called Jan Parnell. She's the Director of Education and Children. She's actually writing climate change and climate literacy into the school curriculum for the entire council. And she's built it into their COVID-19 recovery curriculum, which is very interesting, because she's saying, here's the opportunity. And what they want is, they want every single school in their borough to have these awards, to have these sustainability and climate change leadership teams. And then what they want to do is nurture that and become hub schools to bring in other schools. And I think when teachers have that voice and they feel confident within a group, sometimes we don't like to raise our heads above the parapet. They're not all like Melati and Marta and Alison and Mel here. Sometimes we like to just fit in with everybody else. But once we are confident that there's a team of us, then we can say, actually, you know what, this is what I'm delivering. You know, it's not just going to be those little voices on Twitter going, I've got a climate literacy lesson, let's scattergun. Because I say to them, stop scattergunning, share, go and put it on a platform, share it with everybody, go to the right portals and send it out there. You know, I mean,
it's about bringing teachers together and giving them the confidence, and working with students to make this a message that gets heard, so that we can see public policy changing across the world. And that's an amazing ambition. I would like to thank you for your contribution. There's been so many little nuggets and tips and things that people can pick up out of this conversation. I feel really hopeful. And if there's anything I can do to add one little practical thing, I would just like to say to anybody watching, please visit earthday.org over the coming days, just to find out about the campaign for climate education. and environmental literacy, and join the campaign if you can. And just finally, yes?
Can we ask all the teachers to please register themselves on eduCCate Global? We're going to be making our sustainability and climate change leadership training available to every school in the world. Sign up, register, gets going, and then we're going to send you all over to the world's largest lesson. Let's join together. Come on.
Okay, you just did. You just did.
Bring it on.
Okay, so we're just going to wrap up now, and so thank you so much. But we're going to leave the last words to a group of young people who you will see in a short film answering the question that we've been talking about today, calling upon everyone to learn about climate change. Why? Because learning is the first step to action. Thank you so much for joining us.
Our planet is home to up to 30 million different
kinds of animals, but all of this is under threat.
Climate change, the climate crisis. It's so huge, it can be hard to get your head around. With everything going on in the world right now, what can we even do about it? How do we understand what's going on and how can we help? Actually, my friend in Chile might have some good ideas.
Hola. Buenos días, Dante. Nosotros los humanos estamos subiendo la temperatura de nuestro planeta, lo cual está causando problemas para muchos animales. Me gusta compartir mis conocimientos sobre estos animalitos a las otras personas, porque para protegerlos debemos conocerlos.
Learning about how we're impacting our planet is crucial, especially when we're creating all kinds of problems for it. Check this out.
Did you know that all the plastic that was ever created still exists? As soon as I learned that, I knew I had to do something. We depend on this ocean to live and breathe. That's why, together with my sister, we started organizing cleanups, mobilizing the masses, educational workshops, and working with government. Today, our island home of Bali has banned single-use plastic bags.
Impressive, right? Learning what others are doing is great, and we can do it too. Other places are also experiencing the effects of climate change right now. Take Educate's story.
Nigeria is especially vulnerable to climate change crisis, and this crisis is happening right now. People need to understand how urgent this is and find ways to stop it.
Mom, the Wi-Fi! So, getting accurate information out there is crucial, and now so many people have one of these, we can all find out how to help. Wait, didn't you guys talk with Jack the other week? Maybe he can tell us more.
Oh yeah, I can go next. Camera rolling and action.
I've learned from tons of different people all around the world and used film as a way of telling their climate change story. This is an issue that affects everyone, even if it's not obvious. My knowledge means I'm working with others to protect people's rights. Everyone can take part.
Cheers, Jack, that's perfect.
So, people really are trying to protect their homes from climate change. What a shock! Anyway, you need to meet Helena. What she's done is amazing.
My home is here in the Amazon. I've learned how to speak on behalf of this forest, protect it, and give a voice to the people who live here.
Or Nkosi in Zimbabwe.
When I learned about the science behind climate change, I realized more people needed to know more about it too. So I became the leader of my environmental club.
It's amazing what people like you can do. So get to know your planet. It's a pretty special place, because learning is the first step to doing.
No.